It's been a sort of a project that's gone on over a few years. So I've got some interesting sort of insights to tell you about, and hoping to give a pretty sort of open and honest interpretation of how the project went for us, and how we the relationship with the football club went. So yeah, I'm just going to sort of obviously talk you through the project with Cardiff City FC. Just before we get started, I'll just give you a sort of a little bit of background about us, just so you've sort of got an idea of who we are and what we do. So we're a branding agency and digital agency based in Cardiff. We're based just down the road from Cardiff City Football Club. We work with clients of all sectors. We're not a huge team, but we work with sort of clients from tech to e-commerce and construction and food and drink and obviously sports as well. We don't necessarily have like a sector that we specialize in, but we kind of take on every project in the same sort of way, and using similar processes to come up with brands and websites that work hard for their clients. We've got a slightly different approach, I think, to some agencies out there. Obviously, agencies, we all work in our own independent ways that we've developed over years. But ours is essentially based around working with clients initially on a sort of a big project, and then retaining them and spending sort of 3 to 5 years working with those clients. We really like that sort of that relationship we build up over a couple of years, where we can map out a journey and with every client and work out how a brand and the marketing strategy needs to align with their business, and support them along their way to achieving their goals. So this is some of the beautiful team, and all of our projects are based around the concept of design that moves. It's a sort of internal sort of cultural thing that we've got, which is some of our work does move. We do a lot of motion work, but most importantly, we think about how design and the design that we can provide clients can help move their business. All design is commercial, and is the purpose of it is to try and improve a client's business. Is the way we look at it. So we look at how we can move our clients' businesses forwards, or organizations forwards, and make them progressive. But we also look at how we can move people, and like emotionally, and how we can move the clients' audiences in ways and get them to make decisions. And also move the needle, move things commercially, how we can actually sell tickets or ice cream or whatever the client sells, how we can help use design to help make an impact on that part of their organization. So hopefully that sort of come through the process that we've gone through with Cardiff City. We've got pretty standardized. If you work for an agency or if you're a freelancer, then we've got a relatively standard sort of process that we take clients through, where we do a lot of discovery work with clients, where we do workshops and engage stakeholders and partners and really immerse ourselves in their world to understand them as an organization. That's sort of one of the I suppose the challenges that comes with not working with sectors specifically, is that you sort of every project you have to learn all about their business again. But there's loads of crossovers in organizations and challenges when it comes to design, brand, and marketing. Then we look at the strategy and come up with a sort of a big idea and a direction for the brand. And this is sort of specifically around our brand positioning. And then we work that strategy into the brand vision and what that brand looks like visually, and how it works, and what the messages are, what the language is. And then we help clients with application and rollout, and how they can actually launch their brand. And then, as I said, we like to work with them over the next couple of years then to support them and maybe work on campaigns or stay embedded as part of their team. So there's a bit of a snapshot of some of our recent work. So our work is generally sort of, I would describe it as bold and simple. We try and simplify things and cut back on the sort of unnecessary, and get to the point and give a brand a sort of a central core idea that everything works around. We always try and push the envelope of what, and I think every designer probably does this, push the envelope of what's been done in their market before. So no matter what type of company they are, we always try and look at what their market has done and try and push them beyond that, and push them as hard as we can. And we've got a bit of this sort of internal feeling that, you know, if a client doesn't immediately feel uncomfortable with the work that you're doing, then you're probably not pushing them hard enough. So we always try and push them a little bit further than they think they're willing to go, and challenge them along the way. So the story of Cardiff City and Toward is a really interesting one. It's not your sort of typical big brand project and then launch and move on. It's been a real evolution, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why it's a bit more of an interesting one to talk about and to hear about. So Cardiff, for anyone who doesn't know, Cardiff City are a Championship League side. Championship League is for any non-football fans, is one below the Premier League, which is the sort of the top elite of football in this country. And just prior to starting working with them, they had been in the Premier League, and then they've been relegated down to the Championship. So what that meant for us was that they didn't have the huge budgets of Premier League clubs, and from what I've heard from other sort of design teams, is that often even the Premier League clubs don't have the huge budgets they do expect them to have for branding and marketing. There's definitely different sort of levels of those Premier League clubs. So what we found was we had to really work with what they had. They had sort of lots of assets and things, and photography, and a lot of the early work we did with them, we had to utilize that because there just wasn't a huge budget available for some of the work that we wanted to do. So part of it was a passion project, really. We really wanted to help them. They're our local club. They're only based a few miles down the road from where we're based in our studio. So we and also some of the team are just big, massive football fans, and you know, particularly Cardiff City fans. So we just felt it was a really good opportunity for us to help a local team. And throughout the whole project, we sort of took the role of advisor and energizer, where we were sort of really helping them understand how brand could play a part into their communications, and help energize the sort of internal teams there. So the actual rebranding of Cardiff City sort of came about by accident. It didn't really start off as this evolution that we went through. It started off as a campaign to sell more season tickets. So they essentially brought us in and said, you know, we want to sell more season tickets. Can you help us create, you know, a bunch of assets, a bunch of graphics? But we sort of spotted this opportunity and really a necessity to overhaul the brand. And we sort of took it upon ourselves to pitch the idea of rethinking the identity. So you know, it wasn't really a brand project to begin with. We sort of forced it into one. And this presentation is really a culmination of the sort of the 3-year journey we've been on with them, right from that brand evolution, all the way through to from the concept pitch to the implementation of the brand and campaigns and stuff. So rather than one big one-off project. So hopefully that'll be interesting to see. So the sort of first part of it was really opening the eyes of the team at Cardiff City, as in not the actual football team, but the marketing team and the commercial team and the hospitality team. They were really stretched. They had loads going on internally. Their teams were very internally focused. So everything was about, how do we get people to come to games? How do we sell shirts? How do we sell tickets? But they hadn't really been considering the brand from an external point of view and how that was viewed by fans. So they needed a bit of an outside viewpoint. So we wanted to be that and show them what was possible. So we wanted to show them what was going on in football culture and take them on a bit of a journey outside of the bubble that they were living in. And we also wanted to give a fan's perspective and really get a sense of what the feeling around amongst the fans was. So we did what we would call a sort of an evolving discovery phase. Normally we would have a set sort of period of time and a set deliverable out of a discovery phase. But we just, for Cardiff City, just spent loads of time with them, with the teams, with the people, with fans, with at the stadium, just sort of absorbing and learning and trying to find out as much as we could so we could sort of feed that back to them. So part of our early discovery, we spoke to fans, sort of lifelong fans and newer fans, getting a sense of what the club means to them. And it was clear that there was like a real different energy that came from a fan who's been a fan, for 50 years to someone who's recently only started following the club. And the speaking to the different teams at Cardiff City, from marketing to commercial and hospitality, and finding out how they interact with each other and with the brand as well. But also using our own experiences. As I said, some of the team are already fans of the club and go to matches at home and some away. And we went as a team. We went and watched games and sat in the stands and sort of absorbed the match day experience and try and take in as much as possible. And we talked to them about football culture, or football in popular culture. This is and it's really something they hadn't really thought about or considered. The rise of sort of football conversations that happen on YouTube and social channels, and how that's sort of targeting a whole new generation of football fans. Traditionally, Cardiff City have been fairly heavily focused on their hardcore sort of old school football fans, but there's obviously a massive target audience with the younger people who support the club and want to engage with them in ways that they know how to. So it was clear from looking at the way that football's talked about on YouTube and different mediums that it's bigger than one club or one team, and there's a whole conversation going on around it, and just about how football's discussed and consumed is completely different to how the club thought it was really. But we also talked to them about football as a fashion and clothing, and when we first started working with them in sort of 2020, this was a fairly new thing for them and for football as a whole. Really, the idea of kits not just being for match days and not just wearing to matches, but actually wearing as a part of a fashion statement to say, I'm proud to support this club and be part of this football culture and family. So we wanted to show how that visually works in the football world and give them some inspiration. We also wanted to show what was really good in football design, and what's new and where the ball was heading as far as designing football. So we showed them examples. This is just a few, but we showed them tons of examples of different design work that's really pushing the boundaries and pushing football clubs forward. Work sort of by DixonBaxi and someone, a London agency, really starting to open their eyes and show them how they could do things differently and how they could improve the brand. But also looking at design that was great outside of sport as well, or outside of football in different sports, and showing them the possibilities of what they could learn from different sports and different ways of using imagery and typography and graphics, and just sort of trying to inspire them really. Cardiff City is a fairly old club from the started in the early 1900s. So it was important that we had a way of creating a brand that looked to that heritage and that past and that rich history. And this was a recent brand that was just been launched at the time by DixonBaxi again, for AC Milan. And we showed them this as a really good example of a brand that we felt had hit the sort of the high points of keeping the heritage and the elements that fans would recognize and not just going for an all-out modern identity that lost all of that heritage. And we just wanted to show them that even though they're a Premier League club and we're a small agency in Cardiff, there's no reason not to put as much effort into the design thinking and the output as any other big club in the world. We wanted them to think much bigger than them just being a small local club in Cardiff, and really get them thinking bigger and bolder. Another club within the same league, the Championship League, is Bristol City, and we thought this was a really good example for them, to show them how brand consistency can work, and this is something that they massively lacked, was a consistent use of brand. So it was just showing them examples of how brands can work across all different touch points and maintain that consistency, and tell a sort of a bit of a brand story throughout all of their comms. which is something that they really struggled with, given that they had so many different teams trying to put out work. And then also looking at other clubs and looking at how you can build a brand that can grow and adapt to different touch points and different campaigns and different uses, showing how important it was to have a brand that was flexible and that could adapt, and that could change over time as the club developed and as their marketing developed, giving them a bit of a richer sort of bank of assets to work with and a richer brand to work with. So we just wanted to show them what was possible, really. That was the sort of goal. So that this sort of discovery phase led us to 3 goals for the work. So there was probably more than 3, to be honest. It was probably tons, but we sort of narrowed it down to 3 main goals, which was firstly getting the teams to think together and collectively. Many of the teams in the sub teams, the marketing team, etc., had their own way of thinking and their own methods. Some of them even use different designers. So you'd have a designer doing ticket sales and a designer doing shirt sales and a designer doing hospitality. And they use different design languages. There was no real team thinking. We had to bring minds together and really get everyone thinking and singing from the same hymn sheet and thinking collectively. But also we had to look at building fans' trust. That's something that we learned from the discovery phase and from talking to lots of fans and lots of people within the club, is that over the previous years, fans had lost trust in the club, not just from the team performance, which unfortunately they had seen them be relegated, but also decisions from the sort of management around changing kit color. There was a bit of a hoo-ha around a big kit change color, which the fans were massively opposed to, and sponsorship decisions. And it kind of left fans feeling disconnected from the club that they loved. So we wanted to see how we could use brand to re-energize and re-engage those fans and bring them back into the club and give them something to cheer about. And a really important part of it was to create a brand that was designed for all, not just for newer fans, but to really bring in and engage those older fans as well, who had been with the club for so long. And then solving a sort of typical brand problem really, that every company that goes through a brand redesign probably has on their list of things to achieve, which is having a bit more of a unified experience and having a different a brand experience that is consistent between different touch points, but also exciting and interesting and engaging. They had no unity in their message or the delivery of their messages, and they needed a sort of unified brand experience from ticket sales to match days. So once we've been through that discovery phase, our job was really to inspire the team by showing them what was possible and how we could do what we just showed them for their own brand, getting all of the different teams fired up and engaged with the process. And this was something completely new to them. Even though you think of a football club as being a super creative and organized system of marketing, a lot of this stuff was new, and they hadn't really thought about how they could work together as a group of teams to output a consistent brand. So we looked at what they had, which this is a really small snapshot, but there was absolutely loads and loads of marketing materials out there, from social graphics to their own sort of online TV channel, to their web presence, to the in-stadium promotions and advertising. And what we found was it was really sort of inconsistent, jumbled, reactive. Whenever they needed a new campaign for something or a new concept, they would just sort of create a new design style. So there's lots of different typefaces and image treatments and photography styles. And we really wanted to get them thinking how they could think long-term and create a bit of consistency while keeping a brand that felt alive and energized. So we sort of looked through the archives and tried to find things that we could work with. Initially, every piece of work we've ever done for them has been at incredibly tight timescales. Is one way of putting it, is that they're always there's always a need for work to be done fairly quickly and a quick turnaround. A very fast-moving club. So we sort of had to dig around and needed to find some imagery in their banks for this initial piece of work that we could use. And we actually found some really good stuff. There's some really nice imagery that they'd had done, some good fan photography, and some good player photography. It's sort of atypical of, like, you know, your standard football club photography, but we just felt by stripping back all of those design assets and graphic assets that have been mixed and merged with other things, that even just doing that immediately made them feel a bit more modern and a bit better. So we wanted to see how we could utilize those. We also wanted to make sure we used real people at some point during the brand as well. And the work that they do within the community is really important. They've got their own charitable foundation. So we wanted to make sure that we included the fans and the people of Cardiff and the sort of broader fan base of Wales, and really represent the city and all of the supporters in the marketing that we were going to be doing for them. And then looking even further back into the archives, we found a great bank of historical photographs that were sort of really core to a lot of the things that are still true about the club today. You know, where they're based is not too far from this original ground in Indian Park. And there's a definite connection with the city and the history of the city and the club. And we wanted to make sure that we can use this sort of idea of the past to connect with the older fans, but also educate the future fans and show them what the club was all about and the history of it, and how we could represent the city by looking back into the past. So we, as part of sort of looking back into the past, we spoke to fans, and it really interesting. One of their kits from the 1970s was this orange and with yellow and blue, so blue kit with a white yellow stripe. And even now, whenever they put out a new kit, the comments on Instagram are always, you know, when you're bringing back the yellow kit. So we looked at the idea of maybe how we could reintroduce that yellow back into the brand, something they really hadn't wanted to play with and sort of engage with. So, but it was obviously important to fans. So we sort of did some early design experiments, just looking at how we could bring in typography and use their existing image bank. And these were really early concepts. This is the sort of stuff that you don't see in case studies. Just experimenting with how we could use different typography to convey different feelings of modernism, but also history, and just stripping back and seeing how we could create layouts and design styles that are a bit more bold and a bit more sort of in your face and but also consistent. And then we played with this idea that we could use that yellow if it got past the management team, because they were quite opposed to using yellow. They wanted to stick with blue, but we really felt like it needed another color. So we came up with this idea of, for every season, using the away kit color as a sort of complementary color to their standard home blue kit. So we brought that into the design concepts that we were coming up with, and looked at ways that we could bring in whatever the away shirt color was for that season, how that could be a way of differentiating different seasons and different looks for the club. So yeah, we tried out typography in loads of different styles and applications, and we were just sort of testing stuff. This is sort of our internal stuff. We did show them this as a bit of a work in progress, and to get a sense of whether we were going in a direction that they felt comfortable with, but also whether we were pushing them hard enough and far enough. And we just explored loads of different applications and different textures and pattern and things like that, and utilizing their own imagery and fan imagery. And just trying to introduce a consistency, but a variation that runs through all of this stuff. And so no two things looked exactly the same, but everything felt like it was part of the same system and the same kit. So we sort of, again, during that discovery phase, talked to loads of stakeholders and loads of fans and the internal teams and we talked to lifelong fans, new fans, fans of opposing teams. That was really interesting to get the viewpoint of what Cardiff City looked like to them. And just to try and establish what makes a football club. And what became clear was that it's not really anything to do with the players and the management and coaches and the results, because they sort of vary from season to season. You know, the team changes, people change, coaches come and go. But really what the football club was all about was the people, the fans, who were going to be there for thick and thin, and they were going to be there, you know, whether the team was doing well or not. And also the place, this feeling of place, and where the stadium is, where the team plays their home games, and the connection that the fans have with Cardiff and the surrounding areas, but also the history and the heritage that goes along with the club, and what the club means to people, and what their vision is for the future, and what they're trying to achieve there is the sort of thing that makes it. So they were the sort of things that we tried to focus on in the sort of third part of what we were doing, which was defining the vision and trying to look at how we could take that initial brand ideas and initial design concepts and refine them and turn them into an actual working brand. So they had this existing hashtag that they used on their social channels, which was City as One. And we felt that even though we were trying to bring as much new stuff to the table as possible, that was actually a hashtag that worked really well and felt like it was consistent with what they were trying to achieve and what we were trying to do for them. So we felt that this sort of stood for you know, club and community being one, and stadium and city being one, and team and fans being one. And we just put together a collection of images that we felt summed up this city as one. I don't know how this comes across on Zoom, but it's just a montage of the sort of the photography we collected and taken along the way that we felt embodied that City as One concept. So as the sort of first part of refining that brand concept was to actually choose a typeface. They didn't have the budget for a custom typeface. That's not something that was sort of ever on the table. So we had to find a commercially available typeface that we could use that did all the things that we needed it to do. So we introduced Hudson NY as a family of typefaces as their sort of display font. And we really liked that it had this industrial feel. It had the sort of sharp, angular, sporty feel, and had a lot of impact. It was big and bold, and sort of predominantly used in uppercase. So it's always going to be sort of you know, sending a loud message out. But most importantly, it was available in a sans and a serif version, which just allowed us to really zero in on the history, but also on the future. And we could, in the copywriting and in the messaging we were coming up with, we could utilize the different typefaces to send different messages and to tell slightly different stories to different people. So we sort of experimented with different treatments to the typography, how we could play with line and shadow and shape to try and give the typography more energy, or make it feel more simplified and cut back and a bit more iconic. And experimented with typography across photography that we captured along with a photographer of the stadium, and just how that photography and typography could work together. And we really wanted to sort of experiment with different ways of using type, and again, these are still all fairly experimental, part of that pitch process. And we wanted to focus in on sort of reduction. Like a lot of the previous brand that they had to work with was overload, and there was just loads of stuff going on. And we wanted to see how we could create a brand that felt sort of like they owned it, like it was their brand, but was reduced and sort of simplified. So just playing with the core color of their blue with the typeface, and bringing in little elements and design graphics that sort of complemented it. Just experimenting how that could work and how we could introduce that. And then looking at how we could bring in type into things like the concourse branding, and how we could bring in those historical elements. how we could bring in the pictures of the past to sort of become a bit of a journey as you walk through the concourse, looking back at the history of the club. And then looking at how those applications can run throughout the concourse as sort of wall graphics and ways of engaging fans and involving them within the brand. Then we looked at sort of how we brought fans into the brand itself through the photography of the crowds and the people within the club, within the stadium, and how we could use the typography to sort of unify people around a common message, like on the flag, and different merch and different things they could buy, hats and scarves and things like that. And then looking at the way that we could bring in the typography into some other initiatives that the club ran. So the Bluebirds experience is like their sort of their experience days for kids to get them involved in football. So we wanted to see how the typeface could apply to a younger market and a different market, and how it could be flexible and work in lots of different ways. But also the hospitality had its own brand. I mean, it did have a completely separate brand, and we wanted to unify that a bit. So bringing in the serif version as part of the hospitality brand, where you've got all of the posh seats in the stadium and the nice food and the nice sort of office facilities they've got for hospitality. Bringing in the bluebird icon as the sort of the logo for the hospitality area, and the darker navy blue color that sort of helps differentiate it from the rest of the marketing that they do. And then we really wanted to find a way of connecting with the fans. Like I said, that was a hugely important part of the whole process. Really, was how to re-engage fans and bring them along this journey. So we went to the matches and we spoke to lots of fans, and you sit in any football stadium and you get a sense for what the club's about and what the culture is. And a big part of that is the chants that are sung by the crowd. Often started off by the sort of hardcore supporters down in the canton end who have the drums and the music, and they sort of start these chants off, and they just sort of rang around the stadium, and they were clearly chants that were owned by the fans. They were not owned by the club. That they were the fans' chants, and we just felt like that was a great opportunity to bring something that a fan would immediately recognize into the brand and make it a core part of the brand. So we took the chants that were being sort of shouted and screamed and sung at the matches and brought them into the brand and made them sort of the key messages and the key language within parts of the brand. So there's sort of a whole number of them, and they've all got their backstories and histories. We've got the road that Cardiff City Stadium is based on is called Sloper Road. So they've got a chant which is "We come from Sloper Road." So that was brought into it. And then they've got "You're My Cardiff" and "Come On City," and all of these things are very unique to the club, and you're never going to hear them shouted out by in another stadium apart from by the Cardiff fans. So they just felt like a really ownable asset that we could utilize and bring into the brand. So we sort of experimented with how we could apply those chants and how we could bring in the historical elements and use that typography and create this sort of design style that felt energized and interesting. And then as part of the sort of brand deliverable, I suppose, was an online brand guidelines that we developed for them. So we put together this sort of online platform where they've got all of their assets, and they've got all access to all of their brand tools and brand materials. And then as new campaigns are done and new graphics are done and new brand elements are brought in, they can be added, and it's a sort of ever evolving space for them that they can use internally as a team or use with external designers or partners. So we've got usage of the crest and usage of colors and how colors are used throughout the different seasons. It's also a place where all of the the sort of brand elements and assets, like the PowerPoint presentations and things like that are kept, and we supported the club with all of that sort of stuff, really rolling out the brand in key parts and helping them create a consistent brand across all of these different touch points, and it's all stored here. So we sort of left them to it really, and just said, right, you've got a toolkit, you can go ahead and roll out the brand, which they continue to do over the next sort of 6 to 12 months. And then they brought us back in and said, we need help with this sort of a season ticket campaign. So that was meant to be the first piece of work, but it got sort of replaced with the rebrand. So we, again, timescales for this project were really tight. This was the first sort of big campaign that we did for them, and then we the whole purpose of selling more season tickets, essentially. So it was the first time we got to use the brand and in a big campaign, and it was the first. And again, they didn't have any photography. We didn't have time for photography or really any budget either. So we had to use their existing photography, which was predominantly just of match days, photographs of their team playing on match days. So we experimented with different ways of applying that those imagery, those images that weren't just just an image of the match day with a message on, how we could bring a bit of vibrancy and a bit of energy to it. So we used this sort of textured woodcut effect to add different levels of energy and movement, and how that could be brought through into the away kit colors, and how they could be combined and just create a feeling of texture and sort of energy and movement, and how they could sort of influence the design without the core imagery, and just use the texture and the patterns and things that we'd sort of created. And again, these were just sort of experiments along the road to launching that first campaign, and looking at how the typography could integrate with the sort of graphics and the textures, and then sort of developing it into a final campaign that was rolled out across all sorts of different media, predominantly used on their social channels and their website, but also in print and outdoor, and sort of promotional graphics around the stadium and around the city, and just sort of bringing together all those elements of the typography, the energy from the sort of image treatments, and those chants which were sort of core to the new brand. So yeah, just a culmination of all of the different elements and things to unify the team and the fans, and just some examples of how it looked outdoors and different sort of applications. And one thing that the club had never really done was any motion work. So we, again, not really sure how this comes across over the Zoom, but brought in some sort of motion graphics that we produced just to add another level of energy and interaction into the brand, to try and make it feel more alive, as well as designing the actual season ticket card and having that connected in some way to the rest of the brand. And yeah, here's some examples of how those chants and motion graphics came about, and just brought a whole new level of energy from anything that they'd had previously. And we just outputted these in all sorts of different ways that they could use them in their screens at the stadium, and in their shop that they've got at the stadium for selling shirts and merch. So that was the first campaign, and then about 6 months later, we were brought in for the second campaign, which was the 2020-2021 season kit launch. So this was our first kit launch campaign for them. So I think what the great thing about working on this brand and this project has been seeing the evolution and being involved in the evolution of it, and not just sort of cutting and running after that initial brand piece had been done. It's been a great sort of evolution of the brand and continuation of that journey. So as you can probably tell by the date of this, it was a pretty bad time to do a kit launch. We were right in the middle of COVID, and it was the height of lockdown, and So it had to be an entirely digital campaign. Obviously, no one was out and about, so we couldn't do any outdoor advertising, and no one was going to watch matches or at the stadium or anything, so we couldn't do anything there. So it was entirely digital, using their website and social channels. And we couldn't have any in-person meetings, obviously, like everyone else, and definitely no photo shoots with the team, which were being, you know, heavily looked after and insulated from the rest of the world. So all we really had to go on was the kit concepts from Adidas. So and we didn't even have these for a little while. So this is essentially what Adidas sent out as, this is what the new kit's going to be. And the club have got some creative freedom over what the kit could be, but they essentially have to pick from a range of kits that are available. And that's the same for all of the clubs in the league. So we had this image of the sort of the home kit was going to be in the traditional blue with these stripes that were meant to indicate water. And then the away kit was going to be this mint color with this sort of camo effect on. And Adidas also sort of gave them the option to just have a bunch of social graphics that they would create and they would use. And that's something they provide to all of the teams within the league, and say, you know, if you want to launch your kit, you can just use these and just put your logo on them. But we were really pushing for getting the opportunity to make something more of the kit launch and do something a bit more visually interesting. So we sort of started playing around with proof of concepts, really, and these were just our early proof of concepts. And we wanted to utilize the away color as we'd done in the earlier campaign, but also just bring in those brand elements or those graphic elements that were going to be included in the shirts, like the waves and the camo texture. And we proposed using 3D renders rather than trying to get photography of the shirts, just to give us a bit more flexibility and a few more assets to work with. With the plan being that we could get sort of 3D turnarounds of the kit and have some interesting viewpoints of the kit that we could work into the campaign. So yeah, we just sort of showed them how we could take those 3D renders and this, you know, these were just using mock-ups for concept's sake, how we could use them in different ways and really sell the elements of the kit and show off the kit in its best light. And experimenting with, again, concepts of how we could then take that kit concept into the new brand, bringing in the typography and the sort of texture and energy, and bringing in the typography and the different angles to just add a new dimension to it. And then, so with the sort of concept agreed, they were really happy with that idea of using 3D renders. Obviously, it was the safest way to do it at the time. So we commissioned this set of renders from another Wales-based agency called Bomper, and they basically sent them the shirts, and they sent them lots of different photographic sort of references, and they rendered these two shirts for us, the home and away shirt, with a 3D turnaround and in different angles. And that just gave us loads of flexibility to use the kit. I mean, we only had a handful of assets to work with, but it was, you know, it was down to us to make the most out of it. So yeah, so we created like a wide range of these assets and graphics for all of their different outputs, for both the home kit and the away kit. So bringing in the dark blue from the away kit sort of collar and sleeves, and complementing that with the mint from the main color, and just trying to sort of push forward that dynamism and the visual interest that we brought in with the rest of the branding. And here's a sort of a bit of a mixture with it, with a secondary animation that we had Bomper do of the stitching of the badge, and just bringing this whole sort of campaign together. And we did loads of different motion pieces for this, just to give them extra assets to work with. So we did like a motion video to do the big launch of the kit launch, which is this example here. I'll let you watch this. Right. Yeah, so that was just a sort of a nice way to end that campaign and or introduce that campaign and then cut that up into lots of different uses. And I think it was such a difficult time for everyone, sort of having to create design work that was interesting and move the needle a little bit. So it was a really interesting campaign to be involved in, an interesting and weird time. And then the sort of final the final big piece of work that we've done for them was the 21-22 kit launch. So this was a season later, and coming up to a new season. And obviously this was still during sort of COVID-y times, but with obviously massive reduced restrictions, and we were able to access fans and players for a photo shoot, which was great. And we wanted to create a real sense of energy. I think this has been seen as a really important piece of them in their sort of brand and their marketing. We really wanted to get across this idea of the connection with the fans throughout this campaign, and showing the players as real people. They'd been insulated and playing on their own in a stadium, an empty stadium for a year. And we wanted to make sure that the fans could really engage with the players. And really introduce the culture of Cardiff as well. So we had a bit more scope for this one because it was a bigger relaunch was needed, or a bigger campaign was needed. So we came up with this sort of big idea of the journey back to football. So obviously it'd been a tough year for everybody of lockdowns and no matches to watch live. So we created this campaign of the shirt being the first sign of the journey back to watching football and playing football and supporting the team. So obviously the new season starts with the new kit, and this was going to be the first time the team had played in front of a crowd for a year, or for 6 months to a year. And it was going to be the first time that the new kit was introduced as well. So we really wanted to create this idea of a journey. So we started by collecting quotes from fans about what Cardiff City meant to them specifically at that time as well, and what their journey back to football meant to them. And we just collected hundreds of sort of statements from fans about how excited they were to get back into the stadium, back supporting the team, and sort of the pride that they still had in the kit and the jersey, and the excitement they had really about the new season starting. So we wanted to really bring those into it and bring these actual fans into the actual campaign and make them feel part of it. And because we had the scope to do photography this time, we really wanted to find a photographer that produced the sort of imagery that we really wanted to use, which was sort of natural, and we really wanted to capture moments rather than poses. We didn't want to go back to the big hero shots of the players. We wanted to make it feel a lot more natural and sort of engaging. So we found this photographer called Will Douglas, who's a London-based photographer, and he's shot for Nike and Adidas and some of the biggest football name or sports names. And we assumed he would be massively out of budget, but we contacted him, and it turns out he's from Cardiff, and he was just, I think, after a period of not being able to shoot anything, he was up for trying anything, and was just really excited by the prospect of being able to come back to Cardiff and shoot his local club and the fans. So yeah, we were really pleased to get him involved, and he came down, and we shot predominantly, we used the home kit on fans, capturing moments in sort of real environments and trying to get this balance between urban Cardiff City and more rural parts of Wales. So we went all over and shot in the valleys and lots of different parts of Wales, just to get this idea that the support for the club is much wider than just the Cardiff City Central. And really engaging all of those fans all over, and trying to engage fans of all different backgrounds and different ages and different nationalities, and bring them all together and try and create a true representation of the Cardiff City culture. And then for the sort of team photography, we tried to capture sort of more behind the scenes. So we had Will with his sort of primary color camera, but we had a secondary cameraman doing like capturing video on an old VHS camera to try and give us a bit of texture and visual interest, and just capturing those moments that were sort of fleeting, and sort of as the main shot was being taken, the secondary shot became the shot we used, because it was just more natural and visual, just more engaging. So this is sort of some of the shots that came out at the end of it, and they were exactly the sort of feel that we were looking for. We were really going for that, the players looking relaxed and looking engaged, but the fans sort of being the heroes of the shot, and really sort of utilizing that idea of fashion in football that we'd looked at before, and how the kit was being worn in outside of the stadium and in environments that the fans were just in, when not attending games. So we sort of brought this together in a visual style, brought the photography together and the quotes from the fans in this sort of visual style that was inspired by Scott's scrapbooks, and the idea of collecting memories for future, but also this sort of following the journey and collecting these memories along the journey back to football. So that's where the sort of the scrapbook sort of sticky label concept came from, and just showcasing this journey through these images and through the people and through the fans, and really heroing the people off the pitch as well as on it, and then bringing that into giving as much effort into the showing off the players in the new kit as the fans in the new kit, and using that away color of the pink, which was the new away color, and then coming up with lots of different motion pieces to sort of bring the campaign to life, and give a slightly more edgy feel and a bit more of a different feel to previous campaigns, but still with that brand consistency of the typography and color, use of color, and just producing loads and loads of ways of them telling the fan story along this journey, and then internally as well, using the videos and the brand and the motion graphics to sort of use within the store in the stadium and around the stadium and around the city as well, on sort of billboards and things like that. And we really wanted to do like a full motion piece with music, and we didn't want to use sort of stock music that we'd used before, and we thought about commissioning a piece of music or something, finding someone local, and that's what we did. So Dave, one of the senior designers, who was the sort of lead on this project, and really got immersed in the whole sort of football culture around Cardiff. He'd been following this guy, Mace the Great, who's a grime artist in Cardiff, and we just felt his music sort of summed up what Cardiff was about culturally, especially for the younger generation. So we contacted him and asked if we could use one of his tracks, and it turns out that he's like a lifelong Cardiff City supporter, luckily, and he was he was quite happy for us to use his track in this sort of video showpiece that we did. And it kind of went full circle, because he actually ended up filming the music video for this song, which is called My Side of the Bridge, in a Cardiff City shirt and in in the Cardiff City Stadium or one of the stadiums. So yeah, so that just brought it all together really, and sort of finalized the brand. And the motion piece that we did with his music over the top is the sort of final piece to that story. So I'll just play that for you now. On my side of the bridge, you'll never get lost if I do you a tour. You see, you've been mad, but you know what? You want to see your poor. No, I just come to trigger your fool. Now just come up and really your poor. On my side of the bridge, you'll never get lost if I do you a tour. You see, you've been mad, but you know what? You want to see your poor. No, I just come to trigger your fool. Now just come up and really your poor. And that's the sort of story of Cardiff City and Toward.